A simple woman humiliated at the court, only to shock them all as the new judge, Catherine Sullivan, walked into the courthouse with quiet confidence, her calm demeanor belying the subtle storm beneath. Judge Montgomery's laugh echoed across the courtroom, setting off a wave of chuckles aimed at her plain clothes and unpolished manner. What no one knew was that beneath the gray sweatshirt stood the woman who would soon inherit the very bench they worshipped. That morning, Catherine had chosen her outfit with care, an unassuming gray sweatshirt layered over a black t-shirt, faded jeans, and broken-in shoes. She was 45, seasoned by 2 relentless decades in the justice system. From idealistic public defender to one of the most respected district judges in the state, she had earned every wrinkle and every scar. But today was not about titles or tailored suits. Today was about truth. She glanced at herself in the mirror one last time, brushing back a strand of brown hair. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the professional portrait on her judicial appointment letter, and that was by design. "1 week," she murmured, tugging her sweatshirt into place. 1 week before, she would be sworn in as the newest judge at the county courthouse, replacing none other than Judge Montgomery himself. This was the courthouse that had racked up the most complaints for its treatment of everyday citizens. The same courtroom where defendants without deep pockets or flashy lawyers were often bulldozed by the process. Catherine had made her career on integrity, equity, and a deep respect for the people the system claimed to serve. When Chief Justice Abrams offered her the seat, she accepted on one condition. She had to see it all for herself first. "You want to do what?" Abrams had asked, one eyebrow practically reaching his hairline. "I want to observe the courtroom, without anyone knowing who I am. No deference, no charades. I need to see how justice is really served when no one's watching." After some hesitation and a long sigh, Abrams had agreed. "Your official welcome is scheduled for next Monday. Until then, it's all on you." Now Catherine glanced at the time. The Richardson hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m., a seemingly simple case that had somehow dragged on for 3 exhausting years. The file was riddled with red flags, endless postponements, every time the Richardsons' court-appointed lawyer asked for more time, while the opposing attorneys from Carson and Mitchell were waved through without delay. She slipped her credentials and that all-important appointment letter into her weathered leather bag. Not that she intended to use them. Today was strictly reconnaissance. At the courthouse, she parked among the public. No reserved spot, no fanfare. As she walked through the main entrance, she blended in seamlessly with the everyday crowd, anxious families, quiet observers, confused defendants. No one gave her a second glance. Courtroom 3 loomed ahead, its towering wooden doors designed to intimidate. She knew that effect well, how architecture could shrink a person's voice before they ever spoke a word. She entered silently and slipped into a seat in the back row. The room buzzed with activity, lawyers in polished suits trading pleasantries, clerks hustling papers, the court reporter testing her equipment. At the front sat the Richardsons, a tight-knit trio, mother, father, and daughter Emma. Their faces were tense, heavy with the weight of lost savings and a 3-year battle for justice, all because of a financial advisor they claimed had vanished with Emma's college fund. Catherine scanned the room. The bailiff leaned casually against a desk, chatting warmly with the defense attorney, ignoring the Richardsons entirely. When Emma, nerves shaking her steps, approached the clerk to ask about their lawyer, the response was brisk and sharp. "He'll get here when he gets here," the clerk said with a roll of her eyes. "Go sit down." The energy shifted as the side door opened. Judge Montgomery swept in, robes flowing, chin held high. He was in his 60s, his silver hair gleaming beneath the lights, his aura unmistakable. After 30 years on the bench, his authority filled the room before he ever spoke. "All rise," barked the bailiff. Catherine rose with the rest of the courtroom. She breathed in deeply. Today, she was not Judge Sullivan. Today, she was just another face in the crowd, another citizen bearing witness to the machine of justice. The formalities began. Judge Montgomery called the Richardson case without interest, adjusting his reading glasses as if the file bored him. Catherine noticed his tone shift as he addressed the defense counsel by name, while referring to the plaintiffs simply as the other party. 10 minutes passed before their attorney, a winded Mr. Davis, stumbled in. "Mr. Davis," Judge Montgomery said, voice dripping with condescension, "once again, you demonstrate your disregard for this court's schedule." A few chuckles rippled among the staff. Emma shrank into her seat. Her parents exchanged helpless glances. This wasn't just another hearing for Mvaishamas. It was their future, their daughter's education, their dignity. And yet the court moved on, indifferent. Catherine's jaw tightened. Her hands remained still, but inside her, something simmered. This was exactly why she'd come. 20 minutes into the hearing, Catherine felt her patience wearing thin. The imbalance was blatant. The defense attorney had just been granted his third extension for document discovery. No objections, no scrutiny. Yet when Mr. Davis requested the same courtesy moments later, Judge Montgomery waved it off without a second thought. Her jaw clenched. Her fingers twitched, and before she could stop herself, she was on her feet. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady, clear, and utterly unexpected. The courtroom froze. Heads turned. Papers stilled. All eyes locked onto the woman in the gray sweatshirt who dared to speak out of turn. From the bench, Judge Montgomery's eyes narrowed in disbelief. "Ma'am," he said slowly, voice sharp and cold, "this is not a town hall meeting. Please sit down or leave my courtroom." Catherine didn't move. "I apologize, Your Honor," she said calmly. "But I noticed a discrepancy. The defense has been granted additional time for discovery. 3 times now, yet the plaintiffs were denied the same consideration just moments ago. Shouldn't procedural fairness apply to both sides?" A collective murmur stirred the room. The defense attorney twisted in his chair to glare at her, insulted. In the front row, the Richardsons turned, startled, hope flickering faintly in their eyes. Someone, anyone, was finally speaking up. Judge Montgomery flushed. "And you are?" he asked, voice clipped. "A concerned observer," Catherine replied evenly, not blinking. The judge leaned back in his chair, folding his arms in slow disdain. "Well, concerned observer," he said, each syllable soaked in sarcasm. "When you pass the bar and practice law for 30 years, perhaps your opinion on courtroom procedure might carry some weight. Until then, you will sit down or be removed from this court." Several attorneys snickered. The defense lawyer chuckled under his breath. Even the bailiff took a step forward, ready to escort her out. But Catherine remained poised, her expression unreadable, her voice unwavering. "I understand," she said simply, lowering herself back into her seat. "Thank you for the clarification, Your Honor." Judge Montgomery leaned forward, eyes still locked on her. He wasn't done. "Actually," he said, removing his glasses and placing them on the bench, with theatrical precision. "Since our guest is so passionately invested in these proceedings, perhaps she'd like to enlighten us further." A stunned hush fell over the courtroom. "You," he said, pointing directly at her, voice now sharp and commanding. "Approach the bench." Every breath seemed to pause. The court reporter froze mid-stroke, her fingers hovering. Even the air felt heavier. Catherine stood and walked calmly down the aisle, each step echoing across the marble floors. As she stopped before the bench, Judge Montgomery peered down at her, his expression a mask of authority and disdain. "Your name, for the record?" he asked. "Catherine Sullivan," she said, with quiet clarity. "And what exactly is your interest in these proceedings, Miss Sullivan?" he continued. "Are you a friend of the plaintiff's? A relative?" "I'm here as an observer," she said. "I have an interest in courtroom procedure." Montgomery tilted his head, mocking her with his gaze. "An observer?" he echoed, amusement bleeding into his tone. "With an interest in courtroom procedure." He leaned back in his chair, voice rising just enough for the gallery to hear. "And tell me, Miss Sullivan, where did you receive your legal education?" She could have dropped it all right then, could have said it plain. "Yale Law, class of 2003, graduated with honors, clerked for the state Supreme Court, named one of the top ethical reformers in judicial policy." But she didn't. "I've studied the law, Your Honor," she said instead. That was all. Montgomery didn't hide his contempt. He laughed, short and sharp, his voice booming with derision. The gallery followed suit, attorneys smirking, court staff stifling chuckles. Even Mr. Davis shifted uncomfortably, visibly embarrassed. "You've studied the law?" Montgomery repeated, complete with mocking air quotes. "How enlightening. And based on that study, you feel qualified to interrupt my courtroom and challenge my decisions?" He paused for effect, letting the mockery hang in the air like a gavel dropped mid-sentence. Catherine didn't flinch. "I was merely noting what appeared to be an inconsistency in procedure," she said evenly. Judge Montgomery leaned back, hands steepled, his smugness practically radiating from the bench. "What appears inconsistent to the untrained eye," he replied, "often has a sound legal foundation, something you'd understand if you had any actual legal expertise." He turned to the courtroom, throwing his arms wide in theatrical exasperation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are in luck today. A legal scholar graces our court. Shall we all defer to Ms. Sullivan's vast expertise?" Laughter again, faint but cruel, rippling through the gallery like a slow wave. Catherine caught it in the corners of her vision, the smirks, the snickers. But she also noticed something else. A few faces, quiet, still, uneasy. Spectators who recognized what was really happening, a public humiliation, cloaked in courtroom pageantry. Montgomery wasn't done. "Tell me, Miss Sullivan," he said, his tone dripping with false curiosity, "in your studied opinion, how should I rule on this matter before us?" A trap, carefully set. If she answered, she'd be painted as arrogant and overstepping. If she declined, he'd dismiss her as ignorant. Either way, the spectacle continued. "I wouldn't presume to tell you how to rule, Your Honor," she replied, her voice steady, unwavering. "I was simply advocating for the consistent application of procedural allowances." "Advocating?" Montgomery latched onto the word, his voice rising. "You have no standing to advocate for anything in this courtroom. This isn't a social media forum where every opinion gets a spotlight. He leaned forward now, eyes hard, tone cold. This is a court of law, Miss Sullivan, governed by rules, by protocol, by centuries of legal precedent. It requires years of education and experience to navigate, not sweaters and well-meaning interruptions. The defense attorney nodded smugly. The bailiff chuckled. A few attorneys shook their heads with condescending amusement. Montgomery pressed on, not satisfied. "Next time you feel compelled to offer legal insight," he said, voice biting, "I suggest you arrive with proper credentials and appropriate attire. At minimum, a working understanding of courtroom etiquette." He waved her off with the flick of a hand. "You may return to your seat, but if you disrupt these proceedings again, you will be removed. Is that clear?" Catherine met his gaze without blinking. "Perfectly clear, Your Honor." She turned, walking back to her seat with measured calm, refusing to let their laughter bend her spine. As she passed the gallery, her eyes met Emma Richardson's. The young woman looked crushed, like Catherine's public takedown had confirmed her worst fear, that justice wasn't built for people like her. And Catherine knew that look. She'd seen it too many times before. She had seen enough. But she wasn't done yet, not by a long shot.